I've never really been a Warhammer person. I've always been curious, open-minded about it. I've just never taken the plunge, and I've always thought maybe I would play one of the video games. I might explore the tabletop game, something like that. But now I'm not so sure, because they seem to be going the way, if they haven't already, maybe hardcore fans can correct me, but at least right now, they're going full Sweet Baby Inc. mode, DEI, they're just going in that direction, where they're chasing the approval of genuinely crazy people on the internet who just call any sort of interest, particularly if it's male-dominated, if it's usually sort of nerdy, geeky, and there's mainly guys enjoying it, they'll call it racist, it's sexist, it's all these things, the male gaze, we have to stop this, and we have to insert political messaging agendas in there, otherwise it will not be okay. So this is very much happening with Warhammer. And despite not really being a hardcore Warhammer person, as I said, this really interested me, because the way they've gone about it, it just seems like you couldn't have done this in more of a wrong way, which shows where your priorities are. These are not good priorities. They show you really have an agenda, and the people behind the scenes, they need to go. Something needs to happen here, because they clearly do not have Warhammer's best interest at heart. And because I'm not really a Warhammer person, I'm going to really simplify this down, so hopefully this makes sense even if you're not really into Warhammer. Essentially what it looks like is there was an exchange where someone asked, why did you make female custodians? And they're like the strongest beings, as far as I understand, some of the strongest beings in all of Warhammer. They're almost like perfect specimens. In the past, in the lore, the books, the lore books, they have always been men, and they mention that as such. It's not just like they happen to be men. They literally put in the text that they are men, sons, nephews, descriptions, terms like that. And they specifically were not women. And it's not as if there are no women in the Warhammer universe. There certainly are. For instance, there are the Sisters of Silence, who are all female. So there are female groups in Warhammer. That's not what this is about. So this person asks, why did you make female custodians, despite you yourselves over the years in the text specifically saying that they're all men? And the Warhammer official Twitter account comes back with, since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians. I'm a self-proclaimed non-Warhammer person, but from everything I've seen from hardcore fans, pretty much everyone, they say that this is a lie. This is not the case, and it contradicts what they've written before. So at very best, this is a retcon. They're changing this. And supposedly there is some law book codex that is coming out where they are going to say it, but that doesn't matter because it's a retcon. In the past, you have said otherwise. And retcons do happen, I understand that. But it is the reasoning behind this which certainly feels quite dodgy. You're not doing this because you made a genuine mistake in the past and now you're going to fix it so the law can continue and expand. It's not about that. You are pushing a particular agenda and it's about winning points, appearing progressive, virtue signaling. The people within, you've got a rotten culture that this is your priority. Because again, you're contradicting what's happened in the past and you're making yourselves look ridiculous. I mentioned the Sisters of Silence, that female group, and basically from my understanding, this is going to kill lore for them. And there were likely genuine Warhammer fans who are women, men alike, who liked the Sisters of Silence. And why is anyone going to be interested in them when you can have female custodians who are supposedly meant to be these perfect specimens? Why would anyone go back to the Sisters of Silence? That's what I'm seeing, that this is going to actually just be at the detriment of Warhammer lore, just so you can push this rubbish to appear like you're on the right side of history and you're doing the right things. Fortunately, a lot of people are not having a bar of this. You can see some of the comments. I don't think this approach is going to go as well as you think it will. Why prior to this has there not been a single named character in all the codexes or books who are women? I am a female player. I have ultramarines, orcs, and so on. I collect lots. From now on, I will be 3D printing and I will pirate your books. So the idea that it's only big, fat, sweaty men who are angry about this, no, there are female Warhammer players who can see what this is doing to the lore, that you're not focused on improving this IP, making it the best that can be. You're just making decisions purely to look good to loud minorities who don't even play Warhammer. All they do is they see a space of people enjoying a hobby. They get mad because they've got no passions, they've got no interest in really anything, so they latch onto these political issues. And now they're infesting this. And sadly, some of those people obviously work for the Warhammer head office, and they're pushing this. It's quite sad. We can see that some people have compiled a bit of evidence as well. So, for instance, before BlackRock, and I'll get to BlackRock in a second, but there's a line of text here from one of the codexes. It is known that all custodians begin their lives as the infant sons. So not sons and daughters, or even children, sons specifically, that gender term that these people don't like very much. It mentions at the end here, given up almost entire generations of newborn sons to earn it. So this is a male thing. And you can bet money that if there was any sort of group in the Warhammer universe that was all women, the idea of men invading that space, having male versions, that would be, oh my god, this entire world would melt down. That would be the patriarchy in action, something like that. But when it's the other way around, it's totally fine. And we even pretend there have always been female custodians. That is the real problem here. And bad actors, they will try and misconstrue this argument. They'll try and claim, and you'll see the headlines, male, nerdy, sexist gamers, they're all incels. They're really, really mad because there's females in Warhammer. It'll be something like that. They won't mention the truth, which is that Warhammer, the company behind it, they're contradicting their own lore in the name of pushing ideology. Real life ideology. People want to escape into a fantasy. They can't. Nah, we've got to have real world politics infected into this, because if we don't do that, then it'll be sexism in action. So it's really about this patronizing effort to pretend that this has always been the case, despite official codex's lore saying that custodians were always male. They're trying to actually pretend that that's not the case. Almost like people saying this, they're lying, fans are lying, or they're just treating people like complete idiots. Oh, these idiots aren't going to go back and read the old books. Why would they do that? No, they'll just listen to the Warhammer Twitter account. That's the truth, surely. So it just comes across as totally condescending. They could have at least been honest. They could have just said, and I know again that Codex new book's coming out, but that's convenience. They want to do this, so now they're writing a book that says, yes, there's always been female custodians, but we know what's going on. They could have just been honest and said, hey, in the past, in the 80s or whatever, having a male group was fine. Now we feel like we're under pressure because we've got investment from BlackRock and Vanguard, and unless we inject DEI into this IP, we're going to be in big trouble. They're going to pull funding, and suddenly we're going to be in trouble business-wise. So, yeah, sorry guys, but we're going to have to undermine the law that's been in place for decades to appease these people, basically, the BlackRocks and Vanguards of the world, because that is part of it. If you look at the substantial shareholdings of Warhammer, the company behind it, BlackRock and so on, they have a substantial stake in this. And we've heard time and time again that funding, often it is reliant on you pushing DEI. It's one of the conditions. You're essentially held hostage by them to do this. So there always seems to be that link. These sorts of nefarious groups always seem to have some involvement. They're like puppet masters pulling the strings somewhere. Often you have to find out, you've got to do a little bit of research, but they're always there lurking in the shadows. And looking at what fans have been saying, so going to the Warhammer subreddit, that's always a bad idea with things like this. What I noticed is that the people who seem to have genuine investment in Warhammer and the lore, and they've got knowledge, even those who are, let's say, the most left-leaning, the most progressive people who would normally be on board with this, those people who care about the lore, even they're raising some questions here, and they're sort of saying, hey, I understand what you're trying to do, but this is literally going to cause big problems in the law. Like, this doesn't make sense for what this group is, for what the custodians are. It is really going to cause some issues. And they even suggest, why don't you do more with the Sisters of Silence, for instance? They're quite interesting. You could have turned your attention there. But by doing this, by having the female custodians, you're just undermining absolutely everything. You do get the surface level people. These are obviously people who don't care about the law, but they leave comments because for them, again, it's just virtue signaling. They love to do this where they'll say something is great and positive just to feel good about it. There's no logic behind it. I'll give you an example. Like, this person says, I love the change that there's female custodians. Why? Are you going to give a reason, like why this is a good thing? Or are you going to admit that the only reason it's a good change is because of real-world politics, and this lines up with your worldview? Doesn't matter that it undermines the literal hobby that millions of people have interest in, and over time, more of this happening will undermine it. People will slowly lose interest in Warhammer 40k, and maybe not normies immediately. They won't know about this. But what tends to happen, as you chip away at an IP's integrity, eventually people just stop caring about it. And you actually need the hardcore fans who follow it and have that investment in it, because without them, that sort of passion doesn't filter through to the wider community. If I use another example, because I'm not a Warhammer person, if you look at Baldur's Gate 3, for instance, that filtered through to the normies, the everyday people. It's why it sold 20 plus million copies, because the passionate fans were so vocal about how great it was that people started to take notice, and just everyday people who don't play many games sort of thought, oh, I've heard of that Baldur's Gate 3, apparently that's good, maybe I'll buy that. And that's where the big sales come in, because you get enough of those people. That is a huge market who normally wouldn't be there for something like a CRPG. And it's the same for something like a tabletop game. I mean, I haven't played this, but I've played, say, card games, Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh! Same sort of thing in principle. You need the hardcore fans to bring other people in. And if you don't bring in those other people, those casual fans, then you've got no one to play with. So these idiots, I love the change. You can't give a reason. And there's a lot of these people, cool, I'm still not interested in playing them, but I like the change. It makes them more interesting. But why are you not interested in playing them then? That just seems like, again, you like this change because of politics, but you're admitting that it's bad for the hobby. This all, I'm sorry to say it, but it almost makes me happy that I haven't explored this. Maybe I will. I know there's some great stuff related to Warhammer that's out there, but seeing the way that they're treating it, it's pretty sad. All these great IPs that have incredible potential, and they're constantly being tampered with. They're getting ruined. You know the people behind this decision, they don't give a toss about the IP. They're not the passionate fans who grew up with it, and now they're applying their own take on it. These are people who get a job at head office. Who knows why? They're friends with someone. They've got the right coloured hair, pink hair, blue hair. They put the right pronouns on their resume. They get hired and they destroy everything. I'm sorry if you're a Warhammer fan. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.